讀書會，作者李卓芬，經濟日報出版社出版。聲音演繹無翼在天。第一章，無悔心，跌倒不痛。我錯了，人誰無過？過而能改，善莫大焉。是名醫還是庸醫？一位中年婦女的子宮裏懷疑是長了腫瘤，給她開刀的是一位名醫。在開刀的時候才發現，子宮裏長的不是腫瘤，是個胎兒。名醫陷入痛苦的掙扎，一時繼續開刀，硬要把胎兒拿掉，然後告訴病人切除的是腫瘤，醫師立刻把切口縫上，然後如實告訴病人，看了幾十年的病，今回竟然看錯了。3秒鐘內心的掙扎，名醫渾身無汗。30分鐘後，病人甦醒了。對不起，他站在病人的床前說：太太，請原諒，是我判錯了。你只是懷孕，並沒有長腫瘤。還幸及時發現，孩子安好。你一定能生下一個可愛的小寶寶。家人和家屬全嚇呆了。忽然，病人的一個家屬衝前，捉住名醫的頸子狂叫：你這個庸醫，簡直混賬！有朋友後來笑這位名醫，為什麼當時不將錯就錯，當他是個腫瘤？又有誰知道？名醫淡淡一笑，可是我知道。為自己的身家名譽去拼命的人，不算太勇；不顧自己的身家名譽去維護真理的人，才是真正的勇者。是我錯，還是同學錯？認錯需要極大的勇氣和承擔。教會孩子認錯，亦需要很考究的功夫和耐性。當年陶行知先生任育才學校校長時，有一天看到一名男生用磚頭去砍同學，欲將其制止，並責令他到校長室去等候。陶先生回到辦公室，見到男生，先掏出一塊糖遞給他。這是獎勵你的，因為你按時前來。接着又掏出第2塊糖給他，這也是獎勵給你的。我不讓你打同學，你立刻住手，說明你尊重老師。男生半信半疑咁接過了糖果。陶先生又說：據了解，你打同學時因為他欺負女生，說明你有正義感。接着又掏出第3塊糖果給他。這時男生哭着低下頭說：校長，我錯了，同學不對，我也不應該打人。陶先生又拿下第4塊糖果，說：你已認錯，再獎你1塊，我們的談話也該結束了。是洋賊還是聖人？人誰無過？過而能改，善莫大焉。這真是句至理名言。從前，蘇格蘭有年少無知的小兄弟， 偷了村民的羊，但很快就被捕了。當地村民為咗懲罰他們，就在他們的額頭上印上 ST 這兩個字母，意思是偷羊賊 （sheep thief）。這個恥辱的印記將無情地隨伴住佢哋一生。弟弟覺得羞恥難當，於是喺一天嘅晚上逃離呢一個村莊。從此再也冇人聽過佢嘅消息。哥哥懷住羞恥嘅心留低，佢下定決心改過做人，彌補自己嘅錯誤。從嗰時起，佢熱心助人。村裏如有人病了，他會耐心去幫忙照顧。誰家的農活缺了幫手，他也會熱心地幫忙。就這樣，在其後的數十年裏，佢幫助無數的人，亦從未為佢嘅善行收取任何嘅報酬。許多年後，一個旅行在這個村莊嘅作客，在一個小餐廳用膳，佢發現坐在旁邊的一位老人額頭上印着奇怪的標誌。他還發現村民經常會經過這裏，都會停下腳步，熱情地與老人打招呼，就連小孩也不例外。這個旅客十分好奇，就向餐館的老闆打聽：請問這位長者額頭上印的什麼呢？我也不清楚，這是很久以前的事了。老闆回答。停了一會，又說：我料想是聖人的意思和縮寫吧。停一停，再想一想，繼續犯錯，還是決心改過？富蘭克林是美國建國期間嘅偉人，佢有一個習慣，就係每天晚上反省一下當天發生過的事。富蘭克林反省後發現，佢有13個嚴重嘅錯誤，下面就是其中3項：浪費時間、為小事煩惱、容易和別人爭論衝突。聰明的富蘭克林發現，除非他能夠減少他的錯誤，否則不能有什麼成就。於是，富蘭克林決定每星期選出一項缺點來拼鬥，並把每一天嘅輸贏作出記錄。到咗第2個星期，他另外掏出一個壞習慣，作出另一場戰鬥。同時間，他保持已改的壞習慣不再重犯，也為此作出記號。富蘭克林每星期改掉一個壞習慣的努力持續咗2年多。每改掉一個壞習慣，他都十分高興，並堅持繼續改正下一個壞習慣。這樣，佢逐漸完善了自己嘅性格缺陷，成為了美國歷史上最受人尊重的也最具影響力的人物之一。我們能像富蘭克林那樣，誠懇地觀照自己內心的世界，按照反省一下自己的缺點和過失，努力給予改進，亦會在人生路上有更大的成就。心無掛念，第1章完。演講詞：馬丁路德金。我有一個夢。
I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I
am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time. to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summit of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until that is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negro needed to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But that is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is not to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. As we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our body is heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the city. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghanies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
The end.